My parents hated my boyfriend and offered him a huge bribe to leave me. When he refused, they cut off my tuition and called me a disappointment now that I'm more successful than them there, desperately trying to reconnect, but I'm not interested. So to start, I'm Avery, 26 years old, and for context, I've been with my boyfriend Theo for about 4 years now. We've had our ups and downs, but we're solid. When I say solid, I mean we've been through some serious stuff like life, stuff not just petty drama, but before I get into that, let me give you a little backstory on my parents. My mom, Janet, and dad, Lance, have always had a very specific idea of what my life should look like. I've been the good daughter my entire life, always following their rules, getting straight A's, doing everything. They expected of me. My older brother, Kai, was the bad child, the one who rebelled, dropped out of college, and got into trouble with the law. Needless to say, my parents never let me forget that I was the one who saved the family name, so to speak, in their eyes, I could do no wrong. Everything was going fine until I met Theo, and I mean really met him, not just the guy I go out on dates with, but the person I started thinking about building a future with, the whole long-term relationship thing. Now Theo's not a bad guy by any means, but he doesn't exactly fit my parents' ideal of who I should be with. He's not for money, doesn't have a fancy job, and he's not planning to go into some big corporate career. He's an artist. Yes, an artist, which if you know anything about my parents is like a red flag for them. Remember the first time they met Theo? It was at a family dinner, and he was a bit nervous trying to be polite and all, but my mom barely acknowledged him, and my dad, who usually isn't as harsh, kept making side comments about his career choice. It wasn't exactly a warm welcome, but I didn't think much of it at the time. I just brushed it off and figured they'd warm up to him eventually. The turning point came a few months later. My parents started pressuring me to think seriously about my future. They wanted me to focus on my career, and they insisted I stopped spending so much time with Theo. The reason they thought he was holding me back, they were convinced that if I stayed with him, I wouldn't reach my full potential, and I'd end up stuck in some dead-end life. At first, it was subtle. Little jabs here and there, like suggesting I go to more networking events instead of visiting Theo, but things escalated quickly one evening. After a particularly tense dinner, my dad sat me down and straight up offered Theo money to leave me. Look, Avery, my dad said, not even trying to be discreet about it, you need to be with someone who has ambition, someone who can help you grow, someone who will push you to be better. We're offering Theo $50,000 to walk away from you. If he loves you, he'll do this for your future. I was stunned. Could feel the blood drain from my face. I stared at my dad for a moment, trying to process what was even happening, and if he refuses, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My mom spoke up, then her tone icy, then you'll just have to accept that he's not the right person for you. You're too important for him to stand in your way. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told them to leave Theo out of it, that he wasn't some transaction, and that I was choosing him over anyone else. But that's when the real trouble started. My parents didn't take that well at all. They completely shut me out of their lives for a while, and things got even worse when they found out that I was still seeing Theo. They cut me off, financially stopped paying for my tuition, and started sending me passive-aggressive messages about how I was wasting my potential. I was devastated. Everything I had worked for was suddenly hanging by a thread, and my relationship with Theo was being used against me. Theo was furious when I told him what had happened, but he didn't want me to feel like I had to choose between him and my family. We tried to keep things low-key, but it was hard, and that's when things really hit rock bottom. My parents went beyond just cutting me off. They started calling me a disappointment to anyone who would listen, friends, family, even strangers. They made sure to let me know how much I was letting them down, how embarrassed they were by me. They even made some snide comments about how my life would fall apart without their financial help. I was crushed, but I didn't give up. I kept working hard, and with Theo's support, I managed to pay my way through school, get a well-paying job in a creative field. Yes, it's something they consider worthless, and start living my life on my terms. Flash forward a few years, and I'm doing better than I could have imagined. I'm successful, independent, and genuinely happy with where my life is going. Meanwhile, my parents, well, they've been struggling. Their business isn't doing as well, and the financial security they used to flaunt is slipping away. I never thought I'd see the day, but they've been trying to reconnect with me, claiming that they regret how they treated me, and get this, they're asking for help. I've had messages from them, apologies from my dad, and even a few calls from my mom saying they miss me and want to fix things. The tone has completely shifted. Now it's all about how family is important, and they just want to make things right. But here's the thing, I'm not interested. I've worked too hard to get where I am, and I'm not going to let them just waltz back in and pretend everything is fine. I haven't responded to any of their attempts to reach out, but I know they're getting desperate, and here's where the drama really hits. The last time I saw them, they made me an offer, one that I couldn't refuse after months of them sending me desperate texts and leaving voicemails about how they missed me and how wrong they had been. I finally decided to take a call. It wasn't the easiest decision, but I figured it would at least give me a chance to hear them out, see if they were really sincere about changing or if this was just another attempt at controlling me. I didn't agree to meet them at some coffee shop like they had suggested. I'm not a child anymore, and I sure wasn't going to sit across from them playing pretend like everything was fine. They came over to my apartment instead, and even then I made it clear that I wasn't interested in pretending. I remember the knock on my door. It was a cool autumn afternoon, and I had just finished working on a new project at my job. I opened the door, and there they were, my parents, for the first time in what felt like ages. I actually felt a sense of power. It wasn't the same feeling of being trapped or like I was at their mercy anymore. They looked different too. My dad, once so proud and full of himself, looked tired. His shoulders were slumped, and his suit, which was usually impeccably tailored, seemed a bit too big for him. Now my mom looked like she'd aged 5 years in the past few months. Her smile was strained, but she tried to hide it like she always did when things weren't going her way. "We just wanted to talk, Avery," my dad said, his voice softer than I remembered. I stepped aside to let them in, but I made sure to keep my distance. There was no family hug, no warm welcome, just the air between us filled with tension. They looked around at my apartment, probably taking in the stark contrast to the fancy, meticulously designed house they owned. My place was cozy, modern, but it had personality. Nothing like the sterile, cold feeling I always got at their place. "We didn't expect everything to turn out this way," my mom said, sitting down on the couch. "But we've been thinking we've been wrong. We want to make things right." I stayed silent. This wasn't the first time they had claimed to want to fix things. In fact, I had gotten a lot of apologies over the past year, but they always came with conditions like, "We're sorry for the way we treated you, but you need to understand why we did it," or "We regret our actions, but you need to come back to the family and help us." Always that catch, and this time it wasn't any different. My dad, who had barely acknowledged Theo's existence in the past, sat forward and cleared his throat. "Avery, we've been struggling, and we realize that we pushed you too far, made you choose between your family and Theo." He looked at my mom for a moment before turning back to me. "We want to offer you a way to make up for it. We can't change the past, but we can make your future better." I braced myself. Knew what was coming next. This was the part where they tried to buy their way back into my life. Money had always been their solution to everything. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice steady, even though my heart was starting to race. "We've thought about it, and we've come to a decision," my dad said. "We want to help you. Take the next step. We'll cover everything for you. Your career, your business venture, whatever you need to. Get ahead. We'll invest in your future," my mom added. "All you need to do is come back to the family. Let us be part of your life again. We can work together. It's not too late for things to be right." It felt like I was drowning in their words. They were offering me what I had always wanted as a kid: financial security, the kind of future they had always told me I needed. But I knew it wasn't really about helping me at all. It was about control. They didn't care about me or my happiness. They cared about being able to say they were right about having me back under their thumb. And then it hit me. They weren't offering me money just to support me. They were offering me money to buy me back, to buy my silence, my compliance, my willingness to forget everything they'd done. They thought that after all these years of guilt tripping me, I would just fall for it. They thought that because I had worked so hard to get to where I was, I'd cave at the thought of having an even more comfortable life handed to me. But I didn't need their help. I didn't need their money. I had made it this far without them, and I wasn't about to let them turn that into some transaction where I owed them everything. I stood up from the chair I was sitting in, feeling that rush of defiance again. "I'm not interested in your offer," I said, my voice calm but firm. "What you're asking for is for me to forget everything you did to me. Everything you said about Theo, about how you tried to control my life. You want me to just accept your money and pretend we're all one big happy family again. I'm not doing that." My mom's face twisted into something between disappointment and frustration. "Avery, this is your future. We're talking about don't let your pride get in the way of what's best for you. You don't get it." I shot back, my voice rising slightly. "This isn't about pride. It's about respect, and you lost mine a long time ago." There was a long, heavy silence. My dad opened his mouth to say something, but I could see it in his eyes. He was trying to control himself, trying not to let his anger show, but his face betrayed him. I could see how much this was hurting him good. He cleared his throat again, trying to regain some composure. "Well, if that's how you feel, I suppose there's nothing more to say." Nodded, not because I agreed, but because I was done with this conversation. "No, I think we've said enough." They stood up to leave, and I didn't walk them to the door. I stayed in the living room, my back turned as they walked out. The door closed with a soft click behind them, and I stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of what had just happened. It was like I could finally exhale after holding my breath for years. I don't know what they expected. I don't know if they thought they could buy me back into their lives, but I'm done, and I'm done playing their game. I wasn't just walking away from them after their little offer. No, I had something in mind. something that would make them realize that they couldn't just walk into my life, offer me money, and expect me to roll over and thank them for it. I wasn't going to let them think they could control me like they always had, and I sure wasn't going to let them destroy everything I'd worked for. Here's the thing about my parents: they love to act like they're untouchable. They always prided themselves on their wealth, their influence, and the image they had in the community. They were the type of people who would smile in front of others and then whisper behind your back, the type of people who used their money and status to manipulate situations to their advantage, but they didn't realize that. I'd learned a thing or two about using their own game against them the moment they left my apartment that day. I knew what I had to do. It wasn't just about rejecting their offer, it was about showing them how much power I had now. They thought they could control me through guilt and money. Well, now it was my turn to use something against them. The first part of my plan wasn't even that elaborate. It was simple. I knew they had been relying on me for a long time. To keep their image intact, they needed me to maintain the facade of a perfect, well-adjusted family, and as much as they tried to paint me as the disappointment, I knew that a little bit of information could ruin their reputation more than they ever imagined. I started by contacting a few people who I knew had access to some of the less than flattering details about my parents' business dealings. There were some things about their company, things they'd done to get ahead that they had kept hidden for years: illegal stuff, shady deals, things they'd done just to stay on top. I didn't need to go digging too far. I already had the names of a few people who had been involved in these transactions who weren't particularly happy with the way things had gone down. The first person I reached out to was Lena, a former employee of their company who had been fired under questionable circumstances. She had always told me that my dad was ruthless when it came to business, and she'd seen him bend the law to make sure things went his way. When I messaged her, she didn't hesitate to get in touch. She was eager to help, especially since she'd been treated like dirt by my parents. I have a ton of evidence, Lena told me on the phone. A few days later, if you really want to make a statement, I can give you the files they've been getting away with. This for years. I didn't hesitate. I told her I needed everything. She had emails, contracts, anything that showed the true side of my parents. I was planning something bigger than just telling them off. I was going to destroy the image they had spent years building. The next step was to create a situation where their perfect family would come crumbling down in front of their peers. I knew exactly where to hit them: their annual charity gala. It was a huge event for them, the one where they showcased their wealth and connections, and everyone knew them as the successful family behind the company. My parents used this event to reinforce their position in society, to show off their wealth and influence. I'd been invited to the gala every year. Of course, they wanted me there, sitting at the family table, smiling for the cameras. But this year, I had different plans. A week before the event, I made sure the story got out. I had Lena send over some of the documents she had gathered, and I made sure the right people got a hold of them. My parents had no idea what was coming. The press, a few of their business competitors, and even some of the charity's board members were about to get a real picture of who they were. The night of the gala arrived. I didn't show up with them. Of course, I had no intention of being a part of their charade. Instead, I kept an eye on social media, watching the event unfold in real time. Everything was going perfectly according to plan. I could see the photos of them posing in front of the cameras, their smiles wide and practice, trying so hard to maintain the illusion of a happy family. And then, just as my parents were about to take the stage to give their usual speech about philanthropy and community, I made sure that the story broke. The documents were released. The press went wild. The shady business deals, the illegal contracts, the lies they told to build their empire. It was all laid bare for everyone to see. The worst part: my dad's business partner, who had always been seen as the good guy in the family business, was one of the first to distance himself from them publicly. He called out their unethical practices and refused to be associated with them anymore. Within hours, my parents went from being the shining stars of the gala to the center of a massive scandal. Social media exploded with people talking about my parents' fall from grace. The charity event that was supposed to boost their image turned into a public relations disaster. It wasn't just the press. People in the community who had once praised them started to pull away. Everyone who had looked up to them now had questions. I'll admit it felt like a rush watching them try to salvage their reputation. Watching them scramble to fix the damage was like seeing all their years of manipulation finally catch up to them. They couldn't hide anymore. All their money, all their power. It didn't matter, but I wasn't done yet. I knew they'd come crawling back to me, trying to repair what they thought was broken, and when they did, I was going to make them regret ever thinking they could buy me off with money. They didn't just lose their status, they lost me forever. The fallout from everything that happened was more intense than I had imagined. Their business took a massive hit. The press painted them as corrupt and power hungry. And it didn't help that a lot of their supporters and partners jumped ship once the story broke. People who once admired them now turned their backs, and their carefully curated image of success and perfection was obliterated in a matter of hours. It didn't stop there. My mom called me not long after the scandal broke, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and desperation. She demanded to know what I'd done, how I could destroy them like this. You've ruined us, Avery, she said. Do you have any idea how much damage you've caused? We've lost everything. I didn't answer her right away. I just sat there, letting her words hang in the air. Then, finally, I said, you lost everything because you chose to lie, to manipulate people for your own gain. Don't try to make this about me because it's not. You're reaping what you sowed. I just gave people the truth. Her voice faltered for a moment, and for the first time I could hear a little bit of the vulnerability that was always hidden beneath the anger and control, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me to forgive everything they had done to me. Over the years, it wasn't enough to make me forget how they tried to ruin my relationship with Theo, or how they always made me feel like I was never enough unless I followed their rules. My dad didn't call me at all, but I knew he was seething. He always prided himself on his ability to handle situations, to fix things, but this was bigger than him. The calls for an apology from the public, the threats of legal action, all of it was eating away at his carefully constructed persona. But there was one call I did expect, and it came just a few days after everything started unraveling. It was Theo. I hadn't talked to him much during the chaos, not because I didn't want to, but because I knew he was processing everything too. He wasn't one to stir the pot, and he knew I had my reasons for what I did. But that night he called me, his voice calm but a little strained. Avery, I just wanted to make sure you're okay. I know things are crazy right now, but you're not alone in this. He said it was the kind of support I needed. He wasn't mad at me for what I had done. He understood why I did it. We had both been victims of my parents' manipulation for so long that when it came down to it, he was just proud that I stood up for myself. You don't have to feel guilty. He added, your parents crossed a line, and you've done what you needed to do. But I couldn't shake the guilt as much as they had wronged me. I still couldn't ignore the fact that they were, well, my parents. They've been a huge part of my life for as long as I could remember, and while I wasn't going to let them back in, the weight of their downfall, of the hurt I caused them, didn't sit well with me. And so that brings me here. The situation right now is that I'm in a place where I'm truly independent. My career is thriving in ways I never imagined. I've grown in ways I didn't even think were possible, and I'm in a much healthier relationship with Theo. My parents, on the other hand, are still reeling from everything. They've tried to reach out a few more times with apologies mixed in with guilt trips and demands for reconciliation, but I've shut them down. Every time they haven't apologized to me directly, they're still trying to salvage their image, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get me back in their corner, but I'm done. So here's where I'm stuck. Am I the a-hole? I've been questioning that a lot lately. Part of me feels like I went too far, like maybe I could have handled it differently. Maybe I could have let things go, let them fix their own mess without dragging them through the mud. But then I think about everything they did to me, everything they took from me, and I wonder if I did what was necessary. After all, they didn't leave me much choice, did they? I'm proud of where I am now, and I don't regret taking control of my life, but the guilt still lingers, and I can't help but wonder if there's a line I crossed that maybe I shouldn't have. I guess what I'm asking is, did I go too far, or did they have it coming? Would love to hear your thoughts.